Okay, na?
Hello and namaste. Welcome to the COVID Care series presented by Apollo Hospitals. Our experts every day take up the most pertinent topics related to COVID-19, and we bring you absolutely authentic, up-to-date, and relevant information. There has been a lot of news lately that COVID-19 is now affecting children and even infants and newborns. Naturally, parents and families are very worried and stressed out, but not to worry. Knowledge and awareness are the key weapons to fight the COVID-19 pandemic. And so I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Shri Shailesh Mantur, who will be discussing today all aspects of COVID-19 and how it affects children. Dr. Shri Shailesh Mantur is a senior pediatrician and neonatologist with an experience of over 13 years. Dr. Shri Shailesh practices at Apollo Cradle and Children's Hospital at Koramangala, Bangalore. He has completed his MBBS from the Basaveshwara Medical College, Chitradurga in Karnataka, and his post-graduation from the PGI, Chandigarh. He is also a member of the IMA. Welcome, Dr. Mantur, and thank you very much for being here today. I request you to begin by giving us a brief overview on how COVID-19 affects children and have things changed during the second wave of the pandemic, and are children really at increased risk?
Thank you, Doctor. Good afternoon, everyone. Today I'll be discussing about the COVID-19 in children, the age group between 1 to 19 years. Today I'll be discussing about a few topics which comprise the signs and symptoms of the COVID, how it transmitted, to whom you have to do the testing, and what all tests are required, what tests are available, what are the danger signs, how the classification has been done on the COVID, and how to treat at a home. And finally, how to prevent and COVID in breastfeeding mother. So how they present, the most common symptoms being fever, cough, cold, sore throat, the body pain, headache, same like other viral illnesses, same like in adults. But in children, we are specifically seeing the abdominal symptoms, the GI symptoms such as nausea, vomiting, loose motions, and abdominal cramps. Recently, we had a patient who came to our OPD with the complaints of a fever and abdominal symptoms. When we asked about the history, there is a positive history of COVID in the family. When we did the investigations, it turned to be a positive. Though the child is stable, is on home quarantine, is recovered well, but diagnosing is more important because we can prevent the transmissions in the family or in the surrounding places. So now, whom to do the investigations? Those who are asymptomatic and they had a contact with a positive person, or those who are symptomatic plus or minus contact with the COVID patient or COVID person. These are two categories where you have to do the COVID test. Some other criteria where the asymptomatic children, those living in a remote area, the facilities are not available, or those who have a milder symptoms living in a remote area doesn't require testing. If at all, if the milder symptoms are turning into a moderate or a severe, definitely they require a testing. And other kids, such as those who are getting admitted in the hospital for some other reasons, let's consider surgeries or some other illnesses, those has to undergo the testing. So now what are tests we have? So we have a rapid antigen. So if that is negative, then RT-PCR. Now these days we are doing more of RT-PCR. If that is negative and child is showing the strong symptoms of the COVID, or child is deteriorating from mild, moderate to severe categories, then the CT scan. If all the symptoms are negative and you are ruled out the secondary causes like any bacterial sepsis or any other causes, still the child is looking more of a COVID disease, then the COVID treatment regimen has to be started. So one, we have a rapid antigen, then second we have a RT-PCR. If everything is a negative and still a child shows the symptoms of the COVID, then it comes to CT scan. If all the negative, start the treatment after ruling out the secondary causes. Now, how to classify the disease? So basically, the classification depends upon the severity and the signs and symptoms. The classified is on the mild, moderate, and the severe. Mild forms, it usually they present with symptoms of a flu like a fever, cough, cold, sore throat, body pain, headache, GI symptoms as I said, or sometimes rashes, sometimes there may be conjunctivitis. But in a milder symptoms, there is no breathing difficulties and the saturation is always more than 95. Whereas in a moderate form, you have all the symptoms of the milder form, but there is a breathing difficulty. The child is associated with respiratory distress, and the saturation is between 90 to 94 in the room air. Whereas the severe form is very easy to diagnose because they are sick. They show all the pneumonia features, ERDS feature, severe breathing difficulty will be there, using extra muscles. They may be in a shock, pale in color, sick looking, cynos sometimes, or sometimes there can be a multi-organ dysfunctions. The organs failure, we can see it. Sometimes there can be coagulopathies, or there can be an acute thrombosis. There is a blood clotting the organs or vessels. So this is how we classify. Why the classification becomes so important? As a parents, we should differentiate mild to moderate. Severe we can differentiate very easily. Mild to moderate we have to differentiate because the mild forms are treated at home. Here parents has to diagnose what is mild, what is moderate. So in the mild category, as I said, there is no respiratory distress, there is no desaturation. The saturation always 95%. So now how to treat the mild forms? Mild forms has to be home quarantine, maintain the good hydration. You will know plenty of liquids. Liquid maybe it's water, ORS, homemade juices, even the breast milk. So give a lot of liquids, healthy diet. Diet may be a low, but it has to be a healthy and balanced diet. And third is a good amount of rest. So maintain the hydration and good amount of rest and the diet. These are more important when you're doing a home quarantine. Then symptomatic treatment. What is symptomatic treatment? Here, for example, a child has a fever and you're giving a paracetamol. That's called symptom treatment. If a child has a cough and a cold syrups. If you have a loose motions or a vomiting or nausea, treat according to the symptoms. These are called symptomatic treatment. And most importantly, parents should check the child's breathing patterns, like breathing rates, how much baby is breathing per minute, and the one should have a saturation monitor at home. So check the saturation every 6 hours, every 4 hours. So saturation has to be more than 95 all the time in a mild cases. When you are in home quarantine, checking the saturation and counting the breaths per minute is so important. So when we call this a respiratory distress, if a child who is less than 1 year and respirates are more than 50 per minute, it's called the breathing difficulty or respiratory distress. If a child is 1 to 5 years, 1 to 5 years and the rates are more than 40 and more than 5 years, the rates are more than 30. It's called the respiratory distress. Whenever you see a child with a respiratory distress or the saturation between 90 to 94, then the child becomes a category moderate. So whenever you see a moderate category, you have to visit the hospital and you have to get admitted. So that's the main reason why to differentiating between the mild to moderate becomes important, because whether the child has to be treated at home or child has to be admitted, it all depends upon the monitoring of the breathing as well as the saturation. So parents should have a saturation monitor. It hardly costs 2,000 to 3,000 rupees. So everybody should carry a saturation monitors now.
So, doctor, if I might interrupt, now it looks like, if the child has symptoms, he or she has to be very carefully monitored. So, in which case, I think the parents also will be anxious. So, they would like to, unlike adults, we can't leave the child alone to monitor the saturation.
Yes.
So, what are the precautions do you think that the parents should actually take by, before they actually, they will be close to the child most of the time?
See, as a parent, when the child is in home quarantine, If the parents are negative, they have to use all the mask and everything, and using the barriers that becomes important. And look for the child activity. If a child is active and breathing patterns are normal, such as normal, nothing to worry. If you find any abnormality in these things, immediately you have to contact it. Maybe through the video calls or through the phone calls, they have to contact, or physically they have to reach to the hospital. Because this require an admission, this require an examinations and certain investigations also. So, what's
Okay, fine.
no, something.
Dr. Srinidhi, I think you're on mute.
No, I think we had a brief network issue at the office. I think we've lost our connection. Can you see me?
Yes, yes, yes.
Please go on. Doctor. I was just asking you what are the rules by which the parents should actually, like, what should they do to make sure that they don't get infected, but they are also with the child.
Yeah. So if the parents are negative, then they have to use the virus like a mask, especially the triple layered mask or the negative, because it gives the maximum protection. And using hand sanitizer, recurrent hand washing, those things are important. If a child is more than 12 years, then they can quarantine in a separate room. If they're less than 12 years, the quarantine in a separate room is difficult. So they have to be with a kid, but they have to use they should take all the precautionary measures. So next, like, how to prevent the disease now. So we all know, we all read also. So these are again the basic precautionary measures: using a mask, especially in children who are more than 3 years. If less than 3 years, the mask is not recommended because they can't breathe through that resistance. The secondly, like using a hand sanitizer, hand wash, then staying at home, then not roaming outside with not being in a group, it definitely prevents transmission. Then ultimately comes as in vaccinations. So when it comes to the vaccination, all the adults, those who are more than 18 years old, they should take the vaccinations. This not only prevent the disease, if at all if you get a disease after the vaccination, still the severity, mortality and morbidity will be much lesser with respect to to those who are not taking the vaccines. Whereas less than 18 years, unfortunately, still the vaccine is not open for them because we don't have enough data or studies which says, okay, the vaccine is safer. Probably another few months or a few years it may take to for the children who are less than 18 years old. Then the next topic is like in a breastfeeding mother and she's positive, how to take care of the kids now, whether to feed or not. A mother who's positive for the COVID, still she should feed the baby because not only improves the bonding, it also prevents the infection. It gives the passive immunity. So now she has to take certain precautionary measures such as using a mask. Again, all the sterility measures like the sanitizer and the hand washing has to be done. If at all the mother is positive and the baby is also positive for the COVID, the mask doesn't require, but still she has to take the other hygienic measures to just to prevent the other diseases. Could be a viral or could be a bacteria. So I'm just summarizing my whole presentation now. So the first of all, one should see what are the symptoms, whether the child falling into the COVID symptoms. It could be just like a flu symptoms or some GI symptoms. If at all a child has a COVID-like symptoms, should undergo the testing. You have a testing like RT-PCR, rapid antigens, and if that comes as a positive, categorize the kit, whether it forms into milder forms, moderate forms, or a severe form. Milder forms is a home quarantine. These are the most common. If you take 100 kids with a COVID positive, 98% will be a home quarantine, and they get treated with just a home remedies. It could be a maintaining the hydration and supportive therapies. And definitely there is no role of multivitamins or antibiotics in the milder forms because the parents keep asking like how to improve the immunity now. Is there any medication? There's a medication to improve the immunity. You have to, in a day you can't improve the immunity. It is like over the course. So we can improve the immunity only through the balanced diet, healthy diet. And definitely in milder cases, there is no immune boosters, there is no antibiotics, and there is no role of any multivitamins. And in a milder cases, we should monitor the child activity, breathing pattern, and the saturation. If anytime the child is moving towards a moderate form, definitely we should visit a hospital, because the moderate and the severe form of a COVID has to be treated in hospitals. Now I'll go ahead with the questions.
Doctor, I just wanted to ask you, we have been reading about some children who do land up with severe disease and severe multisystem inflammation. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that?
Multiple inflammatory system syndrome. It is one of the complications, severe complications of the COVID, where child presents with a high grade fever of more than 3 days, letharginess, and then when you do the investigations, you have a higher CRP, higher D-dimer, higher ferritin, and in such cases, the mortality rate are a bit higher, and those children require ICU setups.
And you were talking about, the building up the immunity for children, over a longer period of time with a proper diet. Could you give us some tips about, what kind of balanced diet you think?
Like it is more of a homemade foods, which is a balance with the carbohydrate, proteins, and fats. And it should also contain fruits and vegetables, especially the colorful fruits and vegetables give a larger immunity, because it has minerals and vitamins, which improves the immunity. And the best way to improve the immunity in newborns, it is breastfeeding. Those who are breastfed for the 2 years, in the lifetime also, they will have a better immunity.
There are some children who already have some pre-existing conditions, so they might be immunocompromised, or they might be taking treatment for other diseases. They might be diabetic, or they might have cancer. Are such people more prone to getting COVID-19? And if so, what do you think those parents should particularly do?
So those kids are called to be high risk kids. They have a comorbidity such as chronic kidney disease, chronic heart diseases, or some immunocompromised, maybe congenital immunocompromised or acquired like HIV, or those who are on chemotherapy. They are prone to develop a COVID, and when they develop it, the severity will be much higher as compared to the other, because the immunity itself is a suppressed. So again, it's a major reason, precautionary measures how we take for the other kids. So again, all the various methods we have to do it and maintaining the hygiene.
Are they more prone to severe COVID? Is there anything
Yes.
like
that? They are more prone for the severe diseases. Morbidity and mortality is much higher as compared to the other kids, the normal kids.
You were also talking about, encouraging children to, not go out and trying to keep them at home. And as you know, that is a huge challenge nowadays faced by parents. It's easier said than done, because at certain age groups, it's very difficult to make the children understand also that they shouldn't be going out and playing. For example, if they live in a large apartment where they normally go out and play. So is there any kind of tip that you would like to give parents on how to, engage the children and try to, really prevent them from not going out and, meeting their friends, or, going out to play, or getting stressed out and getting irritable because of that?
These days it's difficult, definitely being at an indoor. The one thing is, like, if they want to go out, or they're playing with friends, make sure that the friend doesn't have any symptoms. Okay, so if a child who has the symptoms of a COVID or any other viral illnesses has to be separated, has to be tested, and it has to prove that the child is negative. And again, if they're going out, then the barrier methods has to be done using a mask, and all those things becomes more important. And encouraging the indoor, maybe the indoor games, the paintings, these things will definitely helps. Mobile, TV, these are not good options, because they also hampers the brain development. So the best way is the indoor games, talk to the children, spend the time, and painting is something which helps a lot.
Doctor, we also have been hearing some news reports that children do get the the mutant variants more quickly than adults. Is that even right? Do they actually get more of the variant strains of the virus? Is there any particular susceptibility?
So definitely the second variant, whatever the second wave we are seeing, the double mutated the COVID is causing more of an infection in the children. The numbers are scary as well as in adults. But the severity, mortality and morbidity is much lesser as compared to the adults. The first wave didn't show much of concern with respect to the children. Very rarely we used to see a child who was getting infected with COVID or kind of complications. But in current the COVID wave definitely is causing a lot of complications, or many children are getting affected with corona.
Doctor?
Yeah, I'm yes.
So we were talking about the variants and children acquiring it.
Yes. So as I said, like previous in 2021, in the first wave, most of the children are not affecting, whereas definitely double mutated COVID virus showing a lot of impressions in the kids. Many kids are affecting. The numbers are scary. The numbers are as equal to as adults, but the morbidity and mortality are pretty less. But the cause for why the children are affected is not clear. Maybe numbers are more. That's the one cause because the total numbers is very huge. So numbers in the children also has increased. And secondly, it's because of a mutation itself can has led to an susceptible for the kids.
Thank you, Doctor. We have some questions from our viewers. So one question is, how important is it to check vitamin D levels for children? And should we take a daily recommended dose of vitamin D in order to prevent COVID?
Prevention of COVID is more related to vitamin D deficiencies. In general, because of we're staying indoor, we are living in a shed now, so definitely we are deficient of vitamin D. So we have to check the vitamin D levels first. If it's a deficient, then the reports for the vitamin D.
So it doesn't have a particular role in preventing COVID,
No,
or
no,
is it just a general immunity?
yes, there is no relation between the COVID and vitamin D deficiency. We know there is no relation.
Thank you. Another viewer is asking, how long after recovering from COVID is it safe to interact with the kids at home?
At least they say 2 to 3 weeks. 2 to 3 weeks of a quarantine is always better. So after 2 weeks minimum, you have to keep a quarantine. Until then, you can use the barriers and all the things. It also has the protections.
Sorry, doctor?
Barriers are more preferred.
There are two questions which are similar, basically asking how to check the oxygen level of an infant at home. So how do you use a pulse oximeter, or how does it work for a very young child?
So the pulse oximeter, whatever is available in the market, we can use it for the newborns. Use a thumb or a great toe. Fingers it may not help much because it's bigger in size, but a thumb and a great toe helps to read the recording. Whenever it's reading the recording, make sure that the waveform in the monitor, in the pulse oximeter, it should be a normal. And whenever you're checking the saturation, if it let's consider showing as a 90 plus and your heart rate is somewhere around 60, 70, it is wrong. So in an infant, the heart rate has to be a more higher side, and when the heart rate is normal, then only you will have a normal values of saturations. So with the abnormal heart rate, you can't have a normal saturation. And waveform is very, very important. And use the thumb or a great toe.
Another question is about zinc, whether a daily dose of zinc will prevent kids from getting COVID vaccination.
Still, it is not proven. Okay, zinc said to be it improves immunity, but it is not at all proven in the mild cases as well as the moderate cases. We are not using as a routine therapies for the improving the immunity. As I said, to improve the immunity, it is always a diet, fruits and vegetables, and the physical activity. These three things are very important.
Another person is asked what to do if the parents are both positive and there's a very young child at home. So, supposing there's nobody else at home and the child is only 2 to 3 years old, how do they isolate and how do they prevent themselves from infecting the child? But they do have to take care of the child as well, right?
So as I said, it's less than 12 years. If nobody is around, then the parents have to take care. There is a high chance that it can transfer to the kids, but still you have to use a mask, sanitizer, hand washing, and all sterility measures, all precautionary measures you should take. Uh, but there is a chances when you use a mask, it prevents 90 to 95%. When you using a sanitizer and different hand washes, definitely it reduces considerably with respect to the transmissions.
Another question is that, children are going through, as we know, a very stressful period because they're all doing their lessons and everything online and they're quite isolated and lonely many times. We did talk about how to engage them and prevent them from going out, but I think this person wants to know, how do you actually reduce stress itself in kids? Because we're hearing a lot about stress and anxiety in the kids, which they don't express.
Spending time with the kids, that's the major thing. If you're not sticking with the kids, they will be isolated, definitely they'll be stressed. We speak to the kids, counsel them why they are now sitting indoors, what is the things are going on. Talk about the pandemic part. They'll understand. It's not like they don't understand. They understand the gravity of the disease. So, and engage them in the activities. The other activities, the interactivities, any form of interactivities. So that will itself reduces the anxiety and the stress.
The final question is influenza and pneumonia vaccine important during the pandemic for babies?
All the vaccinations, not only the influenza or the pneumonia, all the regular vaccinations are important. Every child should take all the vaccinations, which is maybe an IP schedule or they're following the national health schedule, they should take. So it's nothing like which is related to the COVID. Even if there is no pandemic, one should complete the vaccinations. But per se, to preventing the corona with respect to these vaccines, no, this doesn't have any impact on that. But definitely, it prevents the influenza and pneumonia with respect to the vaccine part.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mantur, for taking all our questions patiently and giving us a very, very good idea about how to manage COVID-19 and how to know the right facts about preventing COVID-19 and managing it in children. I'm sure parents and their families have found it very, very useful. And if you have more queries, you can reach out to us through Facebook Messenger, or you can post them in the comment section. So now we will be signing off, but don't forget to log in tomorrow at the same time, because we have a very important topic to discuss. This will be the series about non-communicable diseases and COVID-19. And tomorrow, we're going to have Dr. T. Raja, who is the clinical director of the Apollo Cancer Institute, Chennai. He's going to talk to us about COVID-19 and cancer. And do join us and participate and clarify all your queries about this very important topic. But till we meet tomorrow, stay safe, take care, and don't forget the SMS, which is the social distancing, wearing the mask, and sanitizing. Thank you very much. Goodbye and namaste.